Starting at the very bottom, you can't get a lower score than this. Thomastik's dominant strings get a 0 out of 10 or a letter grade of F. Hello, so today I'm ranking violin strings from worst to best using both a numeric score and a letter grade. I'm not just reviewing synthetic strings, I'm going to also cover steel E strings, wound gut strings, and plain gut strings. Starting at the very bottom, you can't get a lower score than this. Thomastik's dominant strings get a 0 out of 10 or a letter grade of F. I find the A string to be terrible because it often unravels around third position. The E string breaks too much and the overall sound is horrendous. Moving on to the next string, which is Pirastro's Evah Pirazzi line of strings. They get a 2 out of 10 and a letter grade of F. They're very high in tension and not ideal for older instruments of quality, and to my ear they can make a violin sound like a tin can. They also lose their overtones quite quickly after about 3 weeks of playing. The next string is Evah Pirazzi Gold, which gets a slightly higher numeric score of 3 out of 10, also a letter grade of F. Slightly better than the regular Evahs, but still too tense and too modern sounding. Pirastro's Gold label wound gut strings get a 4 out of 10 for the G, D, and A strings. The sound can be extremely nice, but the pitch stability is really not good. However, there's a caveat. The gold label E string made out of steel by itself is excellent, which I give a 9 out of 10 or a letter grade of A. Pirastro's Passione gets 5.5 out of 10 and a letter grade of D. Even though it's gut core, the sound resembles synthetic strings more. It has good pitch stability, but the tone is extremely monotonous, like most synthetic strings. Pirastro Eudoxa gets 6 out of 10 and a letter grade of D. It has a very mellow sound, but is extremely weak under the bow and somewhat superficial sounding. Now to the extremely good ones. Pirastro's Tonica gets a 9 out of 10 and a letter grade of A. It's affordable, warm, complex, and very close to a wound gut sound, even though it's a synthetic core. I just recommend finding a different E string because they are a little inferior to the rest of the strings in the set. So you could try the Pirastro Gold Label E with the set. It would work very well. Pirastro Oliv gets a 9.8 out of 10 and a letter grade of A+. The G string is world class, the best G I've tried. And they offer many gauge options, which is another huge plus. And in my opinion, they are the very best wound gut set you can get now. For plain gut, Toro also gets a 9.8 out of 10 and a letter grade of A+. Beautiful sounds, and the varnish option helps with humidity. The gold bracket E string gets 10 out of 10 and an A+. It's affordable, comes in different gauges, and has been used by legendary violinists like Jascha Heifetz, Nathan Milstein, and Yehudi Menuhin throughout their great careers. Now to my top choice, and that is the Aquila plain gut strings. I give them a 10 out of 10, a letter grade of A+. I've experienced their strings for quite a long time. They have a very warm, complex, and natural sound. The E can be temperamental in humidity, but tonally nothing beats it. So my winners are Tonica for synthetic, Oliv for wound gut, gold bracket for E strings, and Aquila for plain gut.